Victims who claim they have been scammed are speaking out over undelivered luxury goods worth some $32 million. The Monetary Authority of Singapore posting a $7.4 billion annual loss, its first in 9 years. And another child here has died after getting COVID-19, a 4-year-old who was previously well. This is The Big Story with me, Olivia Quay. Remember to subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss an episode. The latest on a series of complaints over undelivered luxury items. Police are working closely with foreign law enforcement counterparts to trace the couple linked to the case, and warrants of arrest and Interpol red notices have been issued against them. Police have received at least 180 reports involving two companies, Trade Nation and Trade Luxury, which are the businesses allegedly linked to the couple. The Straits Times understands that the undelivered luxury goods amount to at least $32 million, and most of the items are watches. Well, let's find out more about the victims with journalist Nadine Chua, who's spoken to 10 of them. So Nadine, what do these victims have in common?
Most of them are actually avid collectors of luxury goods, namely watches. So when they cannot get their hands on rare or tough-to-get pieces, they opt for resellers like this couple, and they're willing to pay a premium to get them. There's also another group who buy these watches solely for investment purposes. They tend to buy a bulk of these watches and sell them for profit to other buyers.
Well, Nadine, can you share more on what these victims went through?
In speaking to the victims, I found that all of them feel really helpless and at a loss, especially those who poured a majority of their savings into these purchases. One victim, who actually declined to be named, spent $280,000 on 2 Rolex watches and a Patek Philippe watch in April. He had planned to sell both Rolexes and keep the other watch for himself. He said he felt safe putting so much money into them because he had made multiple purchases with the couple since November last year. But when the couple started dodging his calls and giving excuses on shipment delays, he knew he was unlikely to see the goods or get his money back. There was another victim. She gave her name as Miss Tan. She bought a Rolex Daytona for herself. It cost about $62,000, and it was meant to be a post-graduation present for herself, but she never received it.
Nadine Chua there, journalist at the Straits Times. The Monetary Authority of Singapore has posted an overall loss for the first time in 9 years. For the 2021-2022 financial year, the central bank registered a net loss of 7.4 billion Singapore dollars. It reflects lower investment gains, higher interest expenses, and a large negative foreign exchange translation effect due to the strengthening of the Sing dollar against the pound, the euro, and the yen. This comes as Singapore's core inflation is expected to hit a high of 4 to 4.5% in the third quarter.
The current bout of inflation will eventually end. The question is, how long will it take, and how much will the economy have to slow down? Taming inflation is like trying to slow down a speeding car on a gentle slope. It takes a combination of forcefulness and calibration. If you do not depress the brakes early enough or hard enough, you cannot break the speed momentum. Likewise, monetary policy has to act early and decisively. But if you jam the brakes too hard, the car may skid or even topple over. The economy may go into a recession. So you have to pump the brakes progressively to gradually slow down the car to a more sustainable cruising speed. And this is why central banks all over the world tighten monetary policy in a series of well-calibrated steps and closely monitor the impact of their actions before deciding on the next step. And that is exactly what MAS2 is doing.
Another young child below the age of 12 has died after contracting COVID-19, making her the second such death in Singapore. According to the Health Ministry, the 4-year-old girl died from pneumonia on Sunday, July the 17th. She had no past medical history and was previously well. On the 15th, she had developed symptoms of an upper respiratory tract infection and fever. 2 days later, on the 17th, she tested positive for COVID-19 via ART at a GP clinic. She was prescribed medications for her symptoms but remained unwell and collapsed later that night. If you recall, on June 27th, the ministry reported that an 18-month-old boy died from encephalitis due to COVID-19 and 2 other viruses. Pediatrician Dr. Lim Yang Chern joins me now. He's from Thomson Paediatric Centre. So, Dr. Lim, in this case, the child died from COVID-19 pneumonia. So, what is COVID-19 pneumonia?
COVID-19 pneumonia is just like any other pneumonia. The etiological agent is just due to the COVID-19 virus. A lot of times there may be co-infections found there as well that may not have been released, but I think the predominant concern in this case was probably COVID-19. COVID-19 pneumonia is actually not a very common complication. Often it occurs in around 5% of cases of COVID. And of that 5%, probably less than 1% actually get a severe element of pneumonia causing that can lead to death.
I see. Well, Dr. Lim, then what are the signs of pneumonia in kids? Do they have the same symptoms as adults?
So I think you have to break it down a little bit by age. So in general, for children above 12 years of age, their symptoms are going to be very similar to the adults. These children are older, they are able to verbalize the complaints. So they're able to tell you, they've got a fever, they've got cough, they feel that it's difficult to breathe, and you can also sometimes observe that their work of breathing may be increased. However, for the younger age group, especially for the infants and the pre-verbal age group, it can be a bit difficult because they're unable to tell you. All you can see is that the child is having fever and the child is coughing. So I think one useful indicator for young children is actually whether or not they're able to feed normally. So with pneumonia, you have you've got increased fluid and gunk in your lungs, and this reduces the amount of air exchange in the lungs. And as a result, you need to increase your rate of breathing and your work of breathing to compensate for that. So in children, this will manifest as really poor feeding. They get tired very easily. Let's say, for example, they drink 60 ml of milk, it usually takes them 5 minutes. Now you have to break it up into 3 or 4 times because they just get tired out. So that may be a sign of respiratory distress, and that may indicate a chest infection like pneumonia. For toddlers, however, it's a mixed bag. They have a little bit of both. They are verbal, but sometimes not very reliable historians. So I think a high index of suspicion. I think it's very useful for parents to look at their breathing. So often I ask parents to maybe open up, expose their chest and see how the chest wall is moving when they're breathing. If you find that they're having very deep sort of recessions or deep seesawing movements of the abdominal wall over the chest wall, that may be a sign that it's very labored breathing, and that may be a sign of things like a pneumonia. So these are things that I would say watch out for in children with these symptoms.
Well, Dr. Lim, just to bring in the previous incident of the toddler dying of encephalitis last month, while you said encephalitis is rare in children, how common is pneumonia that could result in death?
So I think pneumonia in itself, viral pneumonia and COVID-19 pneumonia or in general pneumonia is not that uncommon. We see that quite commonly in our practice. Around 5% of cases are pneumonia in terms of a respiratory infection, but severe pneumonia that can lead to death, that's quite rare. So in general, I think that the most common presentation of COVID-19 in children by far and large is still a self-limiting upper respiratory tract illness. Small percentage, like up to 5%, can get a chest infection, a pneumonia due to the COVID, but the severe ones are even a smaller proportion of that. So I think we must remember that this is a reflection of the number of cases we see. So as the number of cases of COVID-19 in children increase, the denominator increases, so the number of cases of severe outcomes will naturally go up a little bit. The rate doesn't change, the percentage rate doesn't change, but because the numbers are just rising, we're going to see possibly more and more severe complications arising from that.
Many thanks to Dr. Lim Yang Chern from Thomson Paediatric Centre. Meanwhile, the more infectious COVID-19 strains are challenging China's hardline COVID-0 approach, with cases jumping to nearly 700 yesterday. While most of the cases are in Guangxi and the remote province of Gansu, the financial hub of Shanghai isn't taking any chances. With 23 new infections yesterday, it's rolled out a testing blitz in 12 of its 16 districts. 4 days after Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigned as Sri Lanka president, there are 3 candidates bidding to take his place. The contest will be between acting president and 6-time Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, as well as senior ruling party lawmaker and former Minister of Mass Media Dulas Alahap-Karuma and leftist leader and former cabinet minister Anura Disan Ayake. Law ministers will vote in a secret ballot tomorrow to decide which of the 3 will complete Mr. Rajapaksa's term, scheduled to end in 2024. The world's 50 best restaurants list is out, and this year's edition features only 1 local establishment, and that's French fine dining restaurant Odette, which drops to 36 from number 8 last year. And it also relinquishes its Best Restaurant in Asia title to Tokyo restaurant Den. Well, chef and owner Julien Royer tells ST that this was an amazing achievement for his team and him with all the challenges they faced in the past few years. Well, those are our top stories today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay, and I'll see you tomorrow on The Big Story.